Yo, what's going on, people? NGS back again for another video. So the topic for today's discussion actually stems from a recent live stream that I did on my Ask Neo Q&A, where I opened it up to you guys to ask me any question under the sun. And one question that I received more so than any was on the topic of Death Stranding. Since it was set to come out in a couple of days, here we are just a few hours before it unlocks digitally, and a lot of people are wondering what are my thoughts on the game, and what do I think about the recent controversy surrounding its review scores. And while I did comment on it briefly during the discussion, I think I've spent like 5 or so minutes talking about it, I felt that it was necessary for me to actually get on camera and do a proper video on it, because it's really an interesting discussion, and there's, no pun intended, a lot of strands that exist that are worthy of talking about, more so than just the standard media bias narrative we see thrown around from people in the community. Now, before we do a deep dive discussion into this, there are a couple of things I need to get out of the way. First things first, I know it's going to be a pretty long one, so occasionally I'm going to take some sips from water because your boy is thirsty like a motherfucker. So yeah, there's that. And you guys know I love my carbonated beverages. The second thing is, just because I know how the internet works, I am in no way, shape, or form with how I talk about this game trying to take a dump on Hideo Kojima, and by extension the concept of creative freedom, expression, whatever have you, yada yada yada. Like, there's a lot of things that are thrown out there when it comes to people who are trying to, crap on those who have a difference of opinion when it comes to this game, that, oh, this must mean that you don't care about different things in gaming and innovation and you want same old. Like, come on. Like, can we stop strawmanning things here? Maybe it's deeper than this, just that. And I will give credit where credit is due. Hideo Kojima, his legacy cannot be matched. This dude has put in his dues for gaming. This dude has crafted a ton of masterpieces, and he is worthy of his lineage. Hideo Kojima is great. He's cool. He's a pretty chill dude, and I like a lot of the stuff that he's worked on. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I haven't played a lot of the games that he's worked on. Why? Because I'm not a fan of Metal Gear. But how is it that me, a person who's not a fan of Metal Gear, and that's not because I don't like the series, I just, never really got into it. I was always playing other things at the time. How is it a person who is not a fan of Metal Gear can appreciate someone's artistic vision? How is that possible? Answer that question. Likewise, why is it okay that we can appreciate someone's artistic vision and their integrity? Why is it not okay for us to actually be like, you know what? I don't really think this is it, Chief. You know what I'm saying? Like, why is it okay to do one but not the other? That's all I really want to say before we get into this video. Just look at that in an open mind. If someone like me, who is not a fan of Hideo Kojima's work in the traditional sense that, oh my god, I love his games, but is able to appreciate them for what they are, why is it not okay for me to come out here and say that, I don't know about this one, bro? That being said, Death Stranding. It's so funny that we're talking about Death Stranding, because I feel like we've been talking about Death Stranding for the entire generation. It's so funny when you consider it, because this game was revealed at E3 2016. That's going on 3.5 years ago. That was the middle of the generation, and here we are. We're almost on the tail end. New systems are about to drop, and we finally have the game. But what's so funny is not the years that we've spent discussing about Death Stranding. It's basically how we literally knew nothing about what the game is up until the past couple of months. Yeah, if y'all can believe it or not, we got the best understanding of what this game would be with those reviews, because we saw a couple of videos here and there and it looks kind of funky, but we were thinking to ourselves, it's not going to be the full game. There's no way that this is possible. And then them reviews drop and we're just like, holy fuck, Kojima, you madman. Like, he actually did it. So from what I've been seeing, reading a ton of reviews, because reading is fundamental and it's very important. You don't just skim the headlines. From what I've been seeing, every single fear that we had, the way Kojima talked about things and some of the gameplay, it seems like it's basically what we thought it was. It is essentially a FedEx walking simulator. That's essentially the gist of the game. So it's not necessarily a game in the traditional sense. It's a game that's very, and I'm quoting a lot of the reviews here because they've all said the same thing, very mundane, very tedious, very boring, lacking fun. A lot of these phrases that you've seen thrown around have described games that are mediocre. Yet this game is getting 9s and 10s and getting praised for it. for its artistic vision. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to the topic of artistic vision and creativity and all that stuff, I'm all for it. If you want to do something quirky and interesting and experimental, go ahead and do it. I feel like all of us have had that phase in our life before, especially if you are a person who likes to create. By all means, a ton of the best filmmakers of all time have had those experimental phases. Take George Lucas, for example. He made a couple of experimental films before he created the masterpiece that is Star Wars. You know, a lot of these artists, auteurs, if you will, they have those phases in their life. And for some people, they come later in life. Some people, they come in the middle. Some people, it comes in the beginning. So that's all well and good. So the fact that Kojima wants to come out here and basically make a Amazon Prime delivery man walking simulator game that's somehow commentary on all these things layered and woven into the story and all that stuff, more power to you, brother. Go for it. That shit don't look fun, though. That shit does not look fun in the slightest. And that's just the vibe that I'm getting for this game. There's just so much attention to detail on micromanaging your experience, so much to the point where it doesn't become fun anymore. And to me, that is one of the biggest cardinal sins in gaming, when your game is not fun. And I know this discussion gets thrown around a lot, like, well, does gaming really need to have fun to be an experience? Like, people assume that when you're playing a game that's fun, you're just sitting there with like a smile on your face, like, oh, this is great. Like, this is no. Like, people, when you go to watch a movie, and if the movie is not making you smile 24/7, they think that, oh, you know, the movie is not fun. It's great. No, you can have a great time watching a movie. Like, case in point, I just saw The Lighthouse last week. You know, The Lighthouse is not a movie that's like really fun and happy-go-lucky and joy. You know, it's a pretty, if you've seen The Lighthouse. But I had a great time watching it. You know? Is everybody gonna appreciate it? No. But I enjoyed it for what it was. Death Stranding, on the other hand, I look at this and I'm just like, that doesn't look like it's fun. That doesn't look like it's gonna give me the same experience and emotion as I feel playing some other games. Take Last of Us for example. That game is pretty bleak. You know, it's not a game that's very comedic. You know, the story is very dire and it's very sad, and there's a lot of stuff that gets woven into that. But the game itself is really fun. You know, I had a fun time playing The Last of Us, just like I had a fun time watching The Lighthouse. But I look at Death Stranding and I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, this doesn't look fun. This just looks like it's boring and mundane because the developer wanted to make it feel boring and mundane and reflective of your life. Like, when we start getting preachy about certain things just for the sake of being preachy, you know, that's no different than all the identity politics being injected in every single thing out there. If you have to come out here and you're just like, well, we want to make you feel like this. You know, when realism goes too far, like the whole Red Dead Redemption 2. The Redemption 2 controversy thing that was going on, how the game was just a bit too realistic for people's liking. It's like, did we really need to go that far? Did we really need to have animations for every single thing? You get what I'm saying? So when I see Death Stranding and all this stuff going about, and how people who are talking about it, they're like, this game isn't fun at all. This game isn't cool. I don't enjoy playing this game. I have no desire to play this game. It doesn't get fun for like 15, 20 hours. But you know what? I am thankful because this game exists, and it challenges the norm of what it means to be a AAA $60 video game. Okay, there's two problems with that right then and there. Number one, all these things that you're using to describe a game, every single one of them, from tedious, mundane, boring, repetitive, no drive whatsoever to finish it. I just want to put it down. No sense of fulfillment, no sense of enjoyment. Y'all have used that to describe so many games that you've given 6s and 7s to. Yet Death Stranding gets away with it. It gets a 10 out of 10. I'm sorry, but you can't pick and choose when something is applicable to your liking just because it's supposed to be part of the experience, if you will. Persona 5 is one of my all-time favorite games. I love this game to death. And Persona 5, and by extension, a lot of JRPGs, have a tendency to take a while before they hit their stride. Why? Because they're introducing the world and the lore and the characters and all the mechanics to you at a gradual pace. Even though this game was critically acclaimed, it got a couple points taken off because, you know, it kind of takes a while in the beginning because they don't really let you do too much stuff, and, you know, the standard JRPG tropes, all this, that, and the third. Yet when Death Stranding intentionally does all these things to make your experience cumbersome, it's okay because it's part of the genre that Kojima is starting, which it's just a walking simulator. It's no different than anything else. It just has the Kojima flair attached to it. So in the future, I don't want to hear any developer make a game and it suffers from any of the things that people have given Death Stranding 9s and 10s to. I think that's just very hypocritical. And, not everyone has been sipping the Kool-Aid, if you will, to throw a phrase out there. There are a couple of people who are just like, yeah, I knocked JRPGs for doing this and I gave them 6s out of 10 and I'm just going to do the same thing for Death Stranding, and that, good on them, good on those people. But when I see people out there come out here and give Death Stranding 10s and they give other games like 6s for the exact same thing, only because Kojima did it, it was intentional, it's kind of weird. And the second thing, challenging what it means to be a AAA $60 video game, because it dared to defy things. It's not going to be a one and done title. It's not going to be a flavor of the month. Like this, the second people throw around these terms, like a game has a purpose to do something, like it's disrupting. Like, what was that ongoing meme in the shonen community? Like, this game is a disruption to the show. Like, this series is a disruption to the shonen genre. It's a deconstruction of this. Like, and it's just like, bro, it's not that deep. It really isn't. You guys are making it feel like it's that deep. And I guess the cool artistic thing to do these days is like, oh, if this game is different than the norm and it comes out as $60 and it's AAA, that must mean that we need these type of games. So we're awarding higher scores for games because they're different and we have to champion these things because they're different. You don't get brownie points for being different. Different for the sake of being different is not cool. It's not fun. It isn't. I'm sorry. I don't know who needs to hear this, but not every single game in the world needs to be the most innovative and like you've never played this type of game before, ever. Like, some of the best games of all time are derivative of games that have come before it and games that have done it just as good. Like, the top games of this generation, some of the best things out there. Like, let's take, for example, one of my all-time favorite games, The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 doesn't do anything different than old RPGs. What it does is that it just crafts it into this experience and it makes these things that really haven't been the focal point for some of these RPGs, it brings it to the spotlight. Like a truly alive world with side quests that are on the level of main quests. Those type of things, making the world truly feel like it is actually a living, breathing world and not just a hub experience. The Witcher 3 does that. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, it harkens back to old school Legend of Zelda, and it takes a lot of cues from recent open world titles such as Skyrim and The Witcher 3. So it's not doing anything new, while its physics system is fucking amazing and superb, and how you can do so much stuff, how it's basically a create your own fun type of experience. But create your own fun experiences have been around for years, for decades. But does that mean that Breath of the Wild is somehow bad? No. It's fun, and that's why Breath of the Wild is getting 9s and 10s. Not because it's an innovation for the Zelda series, but because it decided to do something different that's not so different than what's come before. And it did its own thing. That's it. It just put its little spin on it. Just like The Witcher 3 put its little spin on it. Like Death Stranding has put its own spin on the genre. But Witcher 3 and Zelda were still fun games. They didn't intentionally make things meaningless and mundane and boring. And the only thing I could argue with the case of Breath of the Wild, because I have said it before, is that I'm not a big fan of the weapon durability system. But even in that game, I can work around those things. I don't think I can work around some of the things in Death Stranding because the developer is intentionally making it so I feel like this. Like, I'm just being real with y'all. So when someone comes out there and they say that, oh, we need this because it's going to disrupt the industry and we need more developers to take more creative freedom with these games. I'm sorry, but a lot of developers are taking creative freedom into account. The indie community, is just on fire with all types of creativity. And we still have a lot of AAA games out there that aren't just the simple flavor of the month, if you will. Just because you play a lot of mainstream games that are literally like Ubisoft games, like 1 out of every 10 Ubisoft games, oh, my computer went dark for a second, has some type of creativity attached to it, you know, because a lot of them now are getting cut from the same cloth. So if all you've played is Ubisoft games, and then you play something like Death Stranding, you're like, wow, this is so different. There's like no like crazy objectives and radio towers and blah 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 blah. I mean, maybe Death Stranding does have radio towers. I don't know. But yeah, just because something is a different type of AAA game, that doesn't mean that we're supposed to be giving it awards. Like take Asura's Wrath, for example. You know, that game was criminalized for being nothing but a cinematic button masher. They didn't really have that much stuff going on to it. It was criticized for being a short game. It was like 5 hours long for $60. But I thought that's what we needed. We needed disruption in the game industry. We needed to play those type of games. But people said that game was bad because it didn't give you bang for your buck. So it's okay with Death Stranding? I don't know. I just feel as if there's just some type of bias going around just because this man is Hideo Kojima's name is on it. That's why people are giving this a look like that. Because if this was anybody else, and I'm sure people can post down below in the comment section of all these games, if this was anybody else, any other developer that came out there, if there was just a random indie studio that came out there, maybe the developer of this game was Hideo Kojima, you know, I don't think it would have gotten the same level of praise that it's getting right now. And it's currently sitting at like, what, 83 on Metacritic? 83 on Metacritic, which isn't bad. And I hate the discussion going around there if because a game is, you know, ranked such and such, that means it's a failure or a flop. No, that's actually a good score. But when you come on here and use these reviews as like the be-all end-all indication that, you know, if we don't give this game a good score, that means it's not going to be appreciated. Like, why? You know? Likewise, so all people out there who are saying like, oh, you know, the reviewers, they're so biased and blah, 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 that I can never take the media seriously. Everybody is biased by nature in some capacity. We just show our biases differently, you know? Like a truly unbiased individual really doesn't exist. You can look at things from a neutral perspective, but inherently on some level, we are going to have some type of bias. You know, sometimes it'll seep out a little bit more than others. Like we're seeing right now with the Death Stranding situation, it's seeping out a lot. But reviewers in general, it's going to be coming from their perspective, unless they watch the YouTube video and they're just like, oh, I'm going to copy this review word for word, and that's going to be my opinion. But that's another discussion for another day. Yeah, that's essentially what I want to talk about with this Death Stranding thing. I don't know. It's just like, I appreciate what he's doing and the merits that he's doing something different. But at the same time, just because it's different, that doesn't mean it's automatically better and it deserves praise. And, you know, like, I feel like it's the underdog story, if you will. Like, they're just trying to get behind Kojima because of the mistreatment with Konami and everything. And one thing about that Konami situation, a lot of people don't realize is that what Konami did was messed up and it cannot be forgiven how they mistreated the employees before, during, and after the fact. On some level, when you look at some of the stuff with Kojima and how he was working there and how his games were going insanely over budget and he was missing deadlines and this, that, and the third, like, on some level, Kojima has to bear a level of responsibility. And some of the things that we heard leak out from Konami involving Kojima, that people are like, no, that would never happen. You know, how he was too out there and too zany and couldn't get things focused. You look at Death Stranding and it just kind of raises some eyebrows. Anyways, that's all I want to say to now. For now, my name is NJ, signing out like always. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.